What were you doing almost 5 years ago? Well, I'll tell you what Sony was doing. They were releasing the very first full-frame camera with 5-axis in-body image stabilization. Yeah, can you believe that? The Sony A7II is that darn old. But with its successors being some of the most well-reviewed cameras of all time, let's reach back into antiquity and find out, is the Sony A7II still worth getting in 2019? Let's find out. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out. We've got so much more space. We're standing up today. We've got so much more space. Wow, 2014 seems like such a long time ago. Happy from Pharrell was the #1 song, and John Wick had just blown us all away in the box office. Kind of literally. And in that same year, Sony released this full-frame mirrorless camera, which for the time, I mean, that was crazy rare, but today it seems like every other day another camera manufacturer is releasing a full-frame mirrorless camera, am I right? Before we get too far into the video, however, I would like to thank my friends over at B&H Photo for loaning me this A7II to check out. If you'd like to get your very own budget full-frame mirrorless camera with 5-axis in-body image stabilization, there will be links in the description below. And one of the reasons we're making this video is after I made that series about the Canon EOS RP, everybody mentioned to me how this 5-year-old camera was better in just about every way. So today, we're gonna find out if there's any validity to that. First, let's cover some of the basic specs since no one's probably looked closely at this camera in the last few months, so let's actually switch this camera out to be our primary camera for the rest of the video. There we go, now we are on the A7II, and that A7II has a 24.3 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor. It can record in up to 1080p 60 frames per second in the Sony proprietary XA-VCS codec, and if you're looking for a flatter image profile, it can record in Sony's S-Log2 log profile, which that's pretty cool. This also comes equipped with a 117-point phase detection autofocus system with Sony's face detection autofocus, and you're seeing it right now. Now, it's not A6400 or A7III's new system of face detection, but it's pretty usable. More on this later. Physically, it feels much like a smaller A7 III, and in a move that might frustrate people used to the third iteration of Sony's full-frame cameras, it uses the much smaller Sony battery. Now, honestly, I actually kind of like this since I have a ton of those batteries lying around the studio here. I mean, yes, they don't last as long, but kind of balances out when you've got like huge stacks of them all over the place, right? But enough talking at the camera, let's cover the 4 basic features that I judge everything against to see if it's actually worth buying for the online content creator. You guys. You're who I'm trying to talk to. First up, video quality. Like we said in the spec overview, this is a 1080p camera, and I know it's 2019 and 1080p is kind of like, oh, it only shoots 1080p, big eye roll. Still absolutely relevant today, and honestly, if I'm watching your content, I can't even tell if it's above 720p because I watch most of my YouTube on an iPhone XR. I can't even see 1080p. So don't turn your nose up too aggressively just because of its recording resolution. 1080p is 100% still relevant. Now, the A7II does use the older Sony color science, which in my opinion isn't nearly as good as what they are putting out now, but it's also totally not a deal breaker. I mean, I think it looks perfectly acceptable. Much like Sony's other mirrorless cameras, this does include their picture profiles, and as we all know by now, picture profile 1 is one of my favorite profiles in any camera ever. I mean, it's what we are currently using right here on the A7II and right here on the A6400. So I just spend all of my time recording in it, and this is where you can see the difference between the two color sciences, A7II, A6400. The stabilization in the camera is more for stills than for video. I mean, they do have big props to Sony for putting in sensor stabilization in here, which does move the sensor around a little bit inside of the body, but it's certainly not Panasonic levels of stable. I mean, it will do okay when hand holding, but it just is not gonna work very well for walking around or moving a lot. But image quality is only a part of the overall video quality, so let's talk about audio recording. And the A7II does have a microphone in and headphone out jack on the side, and much like the other Sony cameras, it has perfectly functional preamps built into the camera. I mean, you can currently hear how it sounds. We've got a Rode VideoMic Pro Plus going straight into the A7. And one of the benefits of all Sony cameras is they do let you drop the gain inside of the camera down pretty darn low, so you can let whatever microphone or audio device you're using do the heavy lifting for recording. But let's hop outside really quick so you can see all of that combined together in a quick, succinct vlogging test. And welcome to the vlogging test of the Sony A7II. Yes, we are now wandering around with this full frame mirrorless camera from darn near 5 years ago. I cannot believe that this thing was released almost 5 years ago now. That's crazy to think of, because it still does a lot of what Sony's trying to do with their current cameras like the A7 III, the A6400. It has a lot of the same tech. It does use the older color science, but yeah, this is the vlogging test. You can see it does have in-body image stabilization, and the kit lens has optical image stabilization built into it, so hopefully this is pretty steady. I'm kind of hoping. I'm just holding it here on a Manfrotto Pixie, and we're just kind of wandering around the backyard. You see this? I mowed all this today, and now I'm exhausted, and all I'm ready to do is go to bed. But I want to get you the vlogging test first. The problem with the Sony is going to be is I have no idea if we're recording right now. It has no tally light like Fuji, and it has no flip out screen like Canon or Panasonic. So here's hoping. But yeah, this has been the vlogging test. We're in 1080p 30 frames per second because that's all the Sony A7 II could do. But hey, 1080p is still good. See you back inside. And we're back. We can actually jump now that we've got room here. Yes, image quality is great and all, but let's not forget that if you are an online content creator, the actual image quality will be mauled by some kind of online platform's compression algorithm. Unless you're MKBHD, like that dude's stuff always looks glorious. Maybe 8K isn't all hype. I should get an 8K camera. Either way, for us mere mortals, you've got to be able to reliably get good enough image quality that you can easily reproduce it and it looks okay. So how easy is the A7 II to use? This one's kind of tricky, so let's talk about the physical aspects that I like first. I do like the side-loading SD card slot, single slot, unfortunately, not dual cards. That always makes it easier to change the recording media without having to take the camera off the tripod. Since all my cameras live on tripods, that's a pretty big deal. I also like how the accessory doors are placed next to each other as opposed to on top of each other like the A7 III, because that's still the worst design accessory. That's the worst design thing like on a camera released recently. Those port doors are terrible. They're not as bad here. I also like the 4 customizable buttons that you can easily assign to do a variety of tasks, and you'll need at least one of those to be the recording button because, oh wait, I think we're in the section of things that I don't like now. The recording button harkens back to the day of the A6000 line of cameras that keeps it hidden on the side in the back, just about in the most uncomfortable position you could possibly have placed the recording button in. Now the new cameras do let you change shutter to record, but here you gotta set C1 is eternally the movie record button. Much like the rest of Sony full frame cameras, this one does not have a flip out screen, so those of us wanting to travel light and not need a monitor are kind of hosed either for framing or exposure, or we just gotta carry the extra weight. So it's kind of a negative in one way, shape, or form. But it is a Sony body. If you've used one, it feels the exact same. A subsection for ease of use that I think is actually more important is something I call fiddliness. And that's how easy is it to get the footage you want after you hit record. Big bonus points for fiddliness include flip screens, which the A7 II does not have, unfortunately. Number 2, really good autofocus, which as you saw in the vlogging test and throughout the whole video, it's actually pretty good. I mean, the A7 II's phase detection autofocus system works perfectly fine. I mean, it's not destroying the future of humanity AI-driven stuff like the A6400, but it's totally usable. And I'm starting to become more and more picky about using continuous video autofocus, so me saying it's usable is high praise. And like we just flabbergasted ourselves with, you can actually use a monitor and face tracking at the same time. Thirdly, for fiddliness is decent in-body image stabilization, so you don't need to actually set up the gimbal or the tripod to get just simple shots. You should be able to just handhold, go, and be done. And again, like we said earlier, it's nothing I would depend on. Sony does get points for including it. Sony's thing is they try to fit the biggest sensor in the smallest body, which gives you very small amounts of room to move that sensor around, so it doesn't do much. So it's not the most fiddly camera I've ever used, but it's not as easy to use as some of its successors, except that face tracking thing, like that's insane. And last but not least, if you've been persuaded by this video and decide to buy the A7 II, what does your ecosystem / upgrade path look like? And honestly, this is really the bright spot and the real reason to buy this camera. I mean, we all know buying a 5-year-old camera isn't gonna get you the most up-to-date tech. But with Sony steadfastly standing behind their E-mount, unlike other brands that come out with a new mount, it seems like every other day, any lens you buy for this camera can absolutely move with you. Another benefit is those lenses are some of the best on the market, hands down. You get access to the G Master line, which are incredible incredible. And it seems like all of the exciting third-party lens development seems to be happening with the Sony. I mean, I'm thinking about the Tamron 20-75 and the 15-28. I mean, those are the ones that, it just seems like all the incredible stuff is happening with Sony. It's just a very exciting ecosystem to buy into because it will be here for the long haul and it's already established. Like, you cannot ask for more than that. But at the end of the day, so what, right? So should you buy a Sony A7II in 2019? Not right now. And when I say right now, I mean actually today, the day I'm releasing this video. I mean, this is a perfectly usable camera, and I think it has absolutely decent image quality and a fantastic lens mount system. But you can normally find these on sale with the kit lens for less than $1,000. And when I initially requested this camera, it was under $1,000. But now it's at like its non-sale price, which is $1,500. Do not buy this camera for $1,500. But if you do want to start off with a full frame camera for stills, or even if you want a better low light camera system, you want some full frame goodness for video, then for $1,000, this starts to make an awful lot of sense. I mean, it's not that bad of a camera. Thanks for watching.